Tonight, I'm going to tell you about my activist work in the U.S. history curriculum in public schools. Many of you have followed the story of the Texas Social Studies Standards development. Let's review my review panel's efforts to avoid the studying of the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the founding principles. America's founding documents and principles create constraints to the left's attempts to impose socialism on American citizens. Therefore, leftist academics have a strong desire to omit such studies from the history curriculum so that the next generation of students will not understand the principles that are the basis for our country's founding. In 2001, the Texas legislature mandated a program called Celebrate Freedom Week that emphasizes our founding principles and documents and which is to be conducted in every fall in every Texas public school. During the February meeting of my review panel, my group, by an 8-to-1 vote, refused to include the Celebrate Freedom Week provisions in the U.S. history curriculum. Upon reviewing this omission, the State Board explicitly directed the review panel to include Celebrate Freedom Week. My review panel responded by including the provisions, but only in the introduction to the standards, rather than in the main line, a move that avoided a requirement that students be tested on the Freedom Week items. Later, State Board conservatives moved the Freedom Week provisions into the mainline standards, requiring that the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the founding principles will not only be studied, but students will be tested on them as well. In addition, the State Board of Education conservatives added the mottos, E Pluribus Unum and In God We Trust, into the standards, so kids will be studying those as well. A further constitutional principle added by the State Board conservatives called for students to actually study the wording of the First Amendment's Establishment Clause and Free Exercise Clause, and contrast the actual words with the leftist, ACLU-driven version, separation of church and state. State Board conservatives added the standard, evaluate constitutional change in terms of strict construction versus judicial interpretation. And don't forget the Fifth Amendment. The new standards call for students to study the effects of environmentalism on citizens' property rights. A second area to discuss is the review panel's contempt for military contributions and patriotism, replacing such with excessive multiculturalism. Poster child for my claim here refers to the original 1998 standard that reads, explain the roles played by significant military leaders during World War II, including Omar Bradley, Dwight Eisenhower, Douglas MacArthur, George Marshall, and George Patton. My review panel, in a fit of multicultural passion, removed Generals Bradley and Patton from the list. They said there were too many generals. And replaced them with Ovida Culp-Hobby as a pioneer woman in the military, and Benjamin O. Davis, a household word, who was a Black Army Air Corps colonel who led the Tuskegee Airmen. Wiser SBOE conservatives later restored Generals Bradley and Patton to the list, but they also included Hobby and Davis's Tuskegee Airmen with other groups who played lesser roles in the war. In another obvious attempt to cloud military contribution with multiculturalism, leftist members of the State Board called for individuals who earn the Congressional Medal of Honor to be specified by name in the standards. But, now pay attention here, only those recipients who were minorities. And while on the subject of multiculturalism,